Hello everybody, this is my take on the Israel-Palestine situation, and since I'm a logical person, we're gonna call this video a logical statement about the Palestine-Israeli situation. Also, there is Arabic subtitles. You can enable them by clicking on this icon. Although I'm not sure they're gonna be available on day one, so I hope you excuse me for not really getting them done in time because I really want to release this video early, but I'm working on them, just so you know. And just for your knowledge, I am indeed reading from a script, because if I didn't, the video would have a lot of stutters, and English is not my first language, so me reading from a script is the best solution for that. So excuse me if I'm not looking at the camera multiple times throughout the video. Anyways, without further ado, let's start. Let's start with our main point. Why did Hamas attack Israel? Well, if you're up to date with what's happening in Gaza and in the West Bank, well, you're gonna obviously know that Zionists and Israel have been killing Palestinian civilians for way too long at this point, constantly bombing Gaza and constantly attacking families in their houses in the West Bank. So you could call this attack a reaction or even self-defense at this point, because when you've been attacking someone for this long, you would obviously expect them to react to your actions sooner or later. And just for your knowledge, this has not been happening for a year, 2 years, 3 years, not even 10 years. This has been happening for almost 80 years. It's almost 80 years at this point, people. It's 75 years to be exact. The Palestinians have reacted several times in the past. There has been multiple wars between Palestine and the so-called Israel. A lot of them throughout the 60s, the 70s, even the 80s. And also, we need to clarify that this is not a war on the Jews, nor is it a religious war. This is a war of existence between an oppressive group of people, a colonist regime, an apartheid system, and a group of oppressed, abused, and people that have been treated miserably for the past almost 80 years, as we said. And I've seen a lot of people, one of them is unfortunately Casey Neistat, who is a Jew and who I respect massively, call these attacks anti-Semitic and barbaric. Well, we have to clarify one more time that this is not a war on Jewish people. Instead, this is a war on an oppressive, on a apartheid, on a terrorist, on an abusive regime known as Israel in the current day. Now, although Hamas have stated in the past that one of their goals is, or as I heard many people say, their main goal is to kill Jews, well, who's occupying Palestine? The Hindus? It's the Jews who's occupying Palestine, and they have been doing so for 80 years again. And that's what Israel is. It's a Jewish state. Not so sure about if they're really Jewish because they don't really follow the Jewish religion, but they call themselves a Jewish state, and that's what they are. And since when was a life of a Jew more valuable than a life of, let's say, a Christian, a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Hindu, an atheist? It doesn't matter. All life matters and all life is equal, and everyone is equal in this world. Human life matters no matter what their color is, their race is, and where they live, their financial status. So calling these attacks anti-Semitic is basically enforcing apartheid ideas of one person is more valuable than another based on their race. So to conclude this section, Hamas's recent attacks were reactions, or let's say, or we can call it self-defense at this point, to years of apartheid and oppression. So to our next point, does Hamas kill civilians? So I'm not gonna lie and say they have not killed any civilians in the past. They definitely have, but this is war at this point, so civilians will be touched no matter what. But we gotta clarify lies from facts. We gotta separate these two. Did Hamas behead 40 babies? No, it was just a walk and talk by a journalist that was told the story by, guess who? Israeli soldiers. But let's compare numbers here. Israel has killed almost 1,000 civilians in the past week alone. Hamas, in their, I don't know, like 2-day attack, managed to kill 200 people, which most of them weren't civilians. I mean, this picture shows it perfectly, that Hamas's main target is the government of Israel, not the people of Israel, because again, this is not a religious war. And the damage that Israel has done to Palestinian civilians over the past week is not even close to what Hamas can do in probably a year of war. Like, let's be real with it. We're comparing a ginormous superpower to a group of very primitive soldiers. I mean, they're not primitive really, but if we compare them to Israel, who is a nuclear state, they have nukes, they have one of the best military defense system in the world against missiles, the Iron Dome, and they have probably one of the best spying, if not the best spying program in the world, Pegasus. So is it really fair at this point? If we're talking about fair, no, it's not fair. And if we want to bring up the word fair to this argument, I don't think there's anything fair about Israel in any single point. So if we want to look at the bigger picture, it's uneven, and it's not even fair, and it's not even close to being fair. And if we want to talk about, oh, this is a war, let's leave civilians out of the picture, Israel is pro-killing civilians. It's literally notorious for killing them as many civilians as anyone has ever did, because they don't care. No one is there to really stand up against them. And at this point, it's not even the government that's doing it, it's even some of the people, and a lot of the people actually are doing it. I mean, did you see the video of that kid being burned alive last week? Probably you haven't, because you have been drowned by Western propaganda. He barely managed to come out alive at the end. I don't know how he survived that. And what about the video of that Israeli settler ramming a kid with his car in the middle of the street, and no one even reacted? Actually, they went up and they beat up the kid, a child. So to our next point, does Israel kill civilians? Yeah, they do. Look at this video. It's dumb to even ask this question at this point, because Israel has been bombing Gaza every other day for the past God knows how many years. I think it has been like 50 years at this point. Plus, on top of that, they have formed a siege on Gaza, so that means nothing exits and nothing enters the most densely populated city in the world. 2 million people live there, to be exact. So that means my tripod just broke. Thanks, Israel. So what I was saying, 2 million people have been in a siege for the past God knows how many years, with limited resources, limited supplies, limited water, limited food, limited anything that you need for your life, really. Plus, they're being bombed constantly. Also, on top of that, they don't even have an army. They have very small groups who at this point have been labeled as terrorists, because anything Arab is now being labeled as terrorist, even if it's self-defense, even if it's for a righteous cause, it's now being labeled as terrorist. And Zionist Jews, who have been abusing Palestinians for 80 years at this point, are called humanitarians. I couldn't even pronounce that word properly because of how messed up this is. This situation is no different to what's happening in Ukraine. The big difference, though, is Ukrainians are getting help, the help that they need. They're getting supplies, they're getting food, they're getting weaponry from NATO and from the West. Palestinians are not getting shit. They ain't getting shit, and I'm sorry for swearing, because the Zionists are not letting anything enter Gaza or the West Bank at this point. And just the other day, they bombed the Gaza-Egypt border as a warning. Wow! So to our next point, what's the solution? There is no solution. The only solution for oppressed people to gain back their freedom is war. And if supporting innocent Palestinians is considered supporting terrorists or barbaric groups of people, fuck it. Again, sorry for swearing. Fuck it, I'm supporting terrorists. It's better than supporting Zionists at this point, who have been oppressing people for the past 80 years. And a situation similar to this is the French occupation of Algeria, which lasted not 80 years like the Palestinian occupation or the Israeli occupation of Palestine. It lasted 132 years. And just to show you how long 132 years ago was, 130 years ago was the year 1891. People used to ride horses to work. Benjamin Harrison was the president of the United States. Jewish people were still living in Europe and North Africa and the Arab world peacefully. There was still dynasties in China, and the clearest video footage you can get was this. That's how long it has been. And how did the Algerians gain independence? It was by war, not by talking. There's no room for talking in this situation. And what have the Algerians been called when they started fighting back? Guess what? You can guess it. Terrorists. A movie that I would very recommend for you to watch is called The Battle of Algiers. It shows you just a part of how bad the French occupation was. And I'm very confident to say that it was even worse than the Israeli occupation. I mean, both countries were using banned weaponry to basically abolish, or if that's even the right word, to abolish the oppressed group of people that they were controlling. Just recently, Israel started using, I think they're called phosphoric missiles, which are internationally banned by the UN against the Palestinians in Gaza. So tell me, does that sound fair to you, my dear friend? To me, it sounds like bullshit. Anyway, one last thing I have to say is نصر من الله وفتح قريب. See you soon, everybody. Next video in Arabic.